Jump gate open.
Woo! Boom! And out smashes the white star, ready for
Whoosh.
Action.
Maybe that's the new opening thing. Maybe I'll do that every time like the thing goes live. I'll just go jump gate activated.
All right, Mr. Corwin.
Right.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Zocalo. This is your one-stop shop for all things Babylon 5. This is Shar. That is Norm. We are your lovely hosts for this program. And we've got a cool topic today. And this was suggested by a listener or a viewer, whatever you want to call it, somebody who's in our Discord. Her name is Teppy Lizard. Thank you so much for this topic. We are taking an episode of Babylon 5 and we are putting it in another part of the story. And we're going to see how that shakes out. We're going to play a lot of what if games, if you will. And I don't know if you and I have done this before on this show. Have we?
I don't think so. Not in the context that we're talking about now. So Shar, if you see the banner at the bottom here, Shar and everyone else, it says Believers in Babylon 5 Season 5. It's kind of like, what do you mean? What if the story was told then? Because in the context of Believers, if everyone remembers Believers, Believers was a Season 1 episode. It was written by David Gerald. It was episode 10. So that was early on, way early on in the evolution of the narrative of Babylon 5, where they're just starting to get just a little bit of their feet underneath them as a production, as a story. The major narrative hasn't even kicked in yet with the Shadow Wars or with Londo and Jakar. So we're really kind of looking at the story solely from where the characters are at this time, 10 episodes in, not including The Gathering.
That's right. Yeah. We're just starting to put the pieces together, barely. Like we've just barely even begun to get going with that. And although Infection was a Dr. Franklin centric episode, I would say this is his his first really big character building episode. This is where we really see who he is and what he's made of.
And in the span of like the 5 years, our major characters and the characters that affected, in particular, Sean's story and his parents' story, and in specific, the ambassadors on Babylon 5, Jakar, Londo, Delenn, and Kosh. These are all characters that have evolved in some way or another in the 5 seasons that may or may not give them a completely different outlook on the same situation that Sean and his parents were pleading for in the original episode.
100%. I guess going through a couple of intergalactic wars would do that to you over time. And not only that, but we have an interstellar alliance formed in the wake of all of this. Babylon 5 no longer being an Earth property, if you will, under Earth governance in a way, even though in Season 5 we do have Captain Lockley. Speaking of which, even though we have a lot of the same characters, not everybody who was in Believers is in Season 5. I'm looking at you, Commander Sinclair. That's going to change things. We have new characters we have to introduce and explore how they might react to this situation. So that is all of what we're going to play with today.
Exactly.
And Earl brings up a great question. Where in Season 5? This is important, right? Are we into more of the earlier part of Season 5 where the Interstellar Alliance is just barely getting going and we're right out of Earth's Civil War? Or are we more toward where Sheridan and Delenn are about to head out to Minbar and we're starting to get ready to leave Babylon 5 behind? Norm, let's just start this game right away and determine that. I'm personally leaning a little more toward earlier Season 5.
Should we toast before we get into this?
Yes. Thank you. I almost forgot. Wow.
We're so excited to get into this that this is tradition.
It is. Yes. Thank you for remembering traditions. That's very Minbari of you.
Thank you very much. All right.
Yes,
so
and for that,
we're going to jump right into it. Val 2.
I'm so glad you remembered the show structure. I was just ready to get going on all cylinders. I love playing the what if game. I love putting things together, like putting on the proverbial writer's cap and exploring well, what does this mean? How would it be different? Where are we going with it all? It's like writing a
So,
story in real time.
so you like it, and you like to see this episode slotted in the beginning of season 5.
I think it works better there. One,
Mhm.
because the Interstellar Alliance is pretty new and things are fairly raw between, well, everybody and Earth. People haven't quite figured out where they belong in the wake of 2 wars. They're still sort of trying to figure it out. Like, are we going to work together? Are we still out for ourselves? What does all of it mean? And for the race that Sean comes from, with them being
Mhm.
somewhat isolationist, that puts them in a good position to explore what all of this has meant for them. What has the Shadow War meant to this group of people? Did they try to stay uninvolved? Were they dragged in? Were they decimated? Are they desperate? We get to decide that.
So are we going to say, so we're going to take the dynamic of what's happening to Sean, because Sean just basically has a very severe respiratory illness that needs to be surgically, it has to be surgically addressed, or else Sean will basically suffocate or drown from the fluids of his lungs that are building up. It's kind of like a very, extreme case of pneumonia. And it's not
Right.
that the surgery was difficult. It's just that because he is of the children of the egg, and their belief system said that if you puncture the outer shell of a children of the egg, that means that whatever is inside of them will escape, and therefore will only be this hollow shell of who this person was, and no longer that person
Right.
in total anymore.
Yeah, the soul escapes essentially, and therefore you are no longer a being. Which is why
exactly.
Sean's parents, after Franklin operates against their wishes in
Mhm.
the episode itself, that's why they kill him, because he's no longer their son. He's dead to them.
Right. He is literally a shell of his former self, to pardon
Right.
the axiom. But if we take this story in context of its original intent, do you want to basically like keep Sean's issue untouched, or would you like to have this somehow or another, what happened to him as part of, say, like shadow technology that may have, been left behind, that caused his people these illnesses, something that was fallout from the Shadow
Ooh.
War?
Oh, that's a really interesting dynamic. Let's explore that.
Mhm.
Let's say that Sean's people, the children of the egg, they have inherited some horrendous disease. It's affecting a lot of their people, and it's making them basically come out of hiding, where they
Mhm.
have to seek help. Otherwise, they're going to maybe not die to the point of extinction, but devastating loss.
Mhm. So would
And
that
so it's a
give,
risk.
yeah, and in knowing that whatever Sean is suffering, maybe other people are suffering this from the fallout of the Shadow War. Is this something that forces the children of the egg to kind of like to give up their isolationist mentality and their stance, and join the not the Earth Alliance, the Interstellar Alliance,
Alliance.
so
Oh,
that they
that
can
could be
find,
interesting.
you know,
Does this open the door?
yeah.
Like, I have a feeling you could go into it with Sean's parents. Are they outliers? Meaning other folks on their home world don't really want them reaching out. Like, they're going to find a way to handle it, but Sean's parents are desperate, and so therefore they are reaching out. Or have they reached a point where they've had to acknowledge, look, yeah, this is beyond us. We need help from other people. Let's try it, although with trepidation, and see how it goes. Because they're on their knees. There's too many people who need help for them to ignore it and just hope it goes away, or they can handle it, or what have you.
But the fact of the matter remains that, being from an isolationist culture and being part of a very strict belief system, no matter what happens, we're still, as in season 5, we still have to operate under the impression that they're going to put up a certain level of reluctancy, because how is it going to impinge upon their belief system still? Because that was the whole issue with
Sure.
Sean and his parents in in Believers. And to Sinclair's credit, Sinclair was the only one that asked him what he wants in regards to his survival.
Yes. Oh, we're going to have to get into the whole dynamic of the fact that Sinclair is gone, and rather instead we have Sheridan and Lockley to be working on this situation, and maybe Delenn. We could maybe throw her in as well. But before we get into that, I had another thought. It's gone now.
Well, that's like too being bad. Punctured, like the children of the egg. The soul just went.
It escaped. Whoosh. It's gone now. I am dead. It's okay. We'll move on.
With, I guess the big thing right now, because we're not really like writing an episode, we're just kind of like doing the speculation of what would happen if it was told early on in season 5. 4 ambassadors in particular had particular stances when it came to the parents looking for their assistance or asylum in their governments to see if they can find Sean some type of better solution rather than putting him under the surgical knife of Dr. Franklin. So
sure.
In this case, though, one of those 4 ambassadors is gone. So you don't really have to like add Kosh to the equation, because Kosh and Olkash are both out of this particular dynamic.
No Vorlons. Yeah. So we still have Delenn, but is she really a part of the Interstellar Alliance now? She's not representing Minbar. She can probably speak for the Minbari people, but it's probably more of an Interstellar Alliance issue. I think that's one change we could make, where maybe Sean's parents do come to Babylon 5, because right now that's Interstellar Alliance headquarters. They're hoping, look, can you give us anything? We're looking for all possible alternatives. Dr. Franklin says yes. He's got to go under the knife. It's an easy operation, but we still can't allow that. I don't think that changes at all. But
with the way that Dr. Franklin has learned certain things from his experience over the last 3 seasons.
That's something to consider too. He's gone through his walkabout. He has definitely matured as a doctor. However, we do know that, I mean, he still believes what he believes. And he's still a man of medicine and science. And he does know and believes that this is the best thing for him. However, I would say he's going to be a little more easygoing on respecting the beliefs of Sean's parents, where it's going to pain him more than anything to try and let this go. Maybe he will try and fight for his cause, but not to the point of actually doing it as he does in the episode, where I don't think he's going to be able to cross that line anymore. What do you think?
Well, I want to address a note here that Earl popped in here. And also, speaking of popping in, hi, Dana, and hi, Toralf. It's funny thing is that Toralf and
Hello.
Earl, they both, we all hang out on the Mission Log Discord there from time to time. So glad to have you here, Toralf.
Cool.
So Earl says, if later in the season, maybe it's what makes Franklin return to Earth so he can work on changing the rules, or plays out largely as in season 1 and convinces him that Babylon 5 is no longer for him. See, that's where I like this episode being dropped, because maybe the situation with Sean and his parents are the catalyst for Dr. Franklin's decision to leave, because he doesn't really have to leave per se. It's just that they write him into the story that taking over Dr. Kyle's work on, an Earth dome. But it's kind of a contrivance that, okay, everyone else is leaving. All our main characters are leaving. We have to find an exit.
He's got to move on too.
He's got to move on.
Yeah. Okay. So this adds much more fuel behind that reasoning. Could be the same outcome, but sure, maybe this takes him in that direction of wanting to change his focus in his career. And so then he's got to go to Earth to get it.
Right. And it's possible that in going to Earth, that's where he thinks that he can make policy changes, because he understands a little bit more of the politics behind medicine and the rights and needs of the patients, and how this new interstellar alliance is going to help govern medical decisions that can find a more favorable outcome. Because when in season 1, Franklin was very gung-ho. It was, I'm the doctor.
Yes.
You came to me for a specific reason. It's either my way or the highway. Damn your belief system, because why is yours any more legitimate than mine? But you're the one that came to me. I didn't go seeking out patients. You're the one who came for my help.
and I'm giving you a perfectly legitimate solution that's going to fix your problems, and you're not going to take it? Only because it's not. But, and I wonder if Franklin's also, I'm sure, going to consider that too, because Franklin, he was going to go off and do research, alien infections, what have you, xenobiology, if that's the right term, isn't it? I'm forgetting now.
Good.
But this also ties right into that. What if there are other options that just don't exist right now for this sort of a thing, where non-invasive procedures might benefit a lot of other races? Maybe this is something he can look into while he's at it.
And I like that a lot, because I think that if Believers plays out the way it should play out, and to Toral's point, it's very well possible that it could have been some type of plague infection that either the Drakh or the Shadows left behind, and it affected the children of the egg, so that this society has to come and beg for the help of the Interstellar Alliance. But even so, Dr. Franklin's hands are tied, because he's still governed by Earth Force. He's not Interstellar Alliance. He's Earth Force still. So
this is true. Right.
Maybe because he can't do anything, because his hands are tied, maybe this is like Lord Lockley steps in and says, you have to follow the rules and regulations of the medical tribunal of Earthdome. But Franklin's like, you know what? I let Sean die because I didn't have another alternative. So if I don't have another alternative, I'm going to go out there and find the better alternative. That's always kind of like been his own MO, right? That's why, he was, ship hopping and trading medical services, for his passageway on other ships and other systems.
Yeah, totally. It falls right in line with his history, his character. It's exactly how he would attack this problem. With the slightly more mature perspective that he would have in season 5. I'm loving this.
Yeah. So that's one possible, way that the story could go, especially when Franklin's concerned. But I still want to get back to like where the 3 remaining ambassadors were in relation to Sean's parents, because
let's do
Londo has one of the best lines, one of Londo's best lines, when he says, just how much charity can you afford? Right?
Right, exactly.
Londo is still just looking for any way to get extra credits, ducats, if you will, to be able to go gamble and drink and have some type of semblance of importance on the station. But now he is the Emperor of Centauri Prime.
Soon to be Emperor. Right.
Well, it depends on like where we fit this into the story. Because at the end, at the fall of Centauri Prime, he does.
It's before then, though, right?
Well, he's Prime Minister when he goes back to Centauri Prime with Jakar as his bodyguard, and then with the machinations of the Drakh and the Shadows and the Regent, that's when he gets maneuvered into being the Emperor after the fall of Centauri Prime, where it gets just basically decimated by the Interstellar Alliance's heavy cruisers.
Yeah, but he already knows he's on his way to becoming Emperor, because the Prime Minister is already in declining health and what have you. Maybe that happens. Is it in season 4 now? Gosh, my brain just isn't working. It's where Vera says, you're going to be Emperor, Londo. What episode is that? Help me out, guys. I know you guys are way better at this than I am right now. Anyway.
You mean when Katari's like, and maybe he'll get out, like, kill Lot.
No, not that episode. It's later than that. Shoot. I need to do a rewatch, don't I?
Me too. So, but in either case, so Londo is a completely different person. Maybe he's like, you know what? I don't have time for this. I don't need the money. I don't need the prestige. I don't need the influence. I don't need the respect of my peers or elders or of my of my associates. I am Joanna says I am the Emperor. Joanna. Joanna?
Yes.
Joanna? Yeah.
Joanna or Johanna? Yeah. Either. Let us know.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like Londo would basically say, look, I don't have time for a charity case right now. There's nothing you can offer us. Centauri Prime has enough problems to deal with on its own.
Mm-hmm. The ambassador, though, that I think is really most interesting in all of this, because of how radical his character changed over the course of the 5 years, would be Jakar. Because Jakar is so much more of just a more spiritually rounded person. And Jakar turned down the Children of the Egg because they didn't give him any prestige. They didn't give him like, what are you going to do for me? What am I going to get in return?
Yes. Now, this Jakar does not care about what they can offer him, but what can he offer them?
That's, I think, where he'd probably be have a little bit of, of trepidation, because he's like, look, I know what my influence, my renown here on the station is in decline, because I am getting pushed out being this religious figure that's causing chaos amongst my people. I have to leave. We all know that. But
Well, he's not quite there yet, though, in early season 5. But he is busy working on the Declaration of Principles and the Book of Jakar.
Well, I think that's where we have to probably make a decision, like, where are we going to put this episode? Because then then the dynamics of the ambassadors or the characters are going to change, because they are in motion of certain ways in different parts of the season. So you're right. Jakar he doesn't really have a lot to do at the very beginning, aside from putting together the declaration and making sure that all of that is working out.
He's getting in touch with his muse a lot.
Yeah. But what can he do? What can he do for the children of the egg? That's a good question.
He really can't. And I think that would ultimately be his answer is, I hear your suffering. I empathize, but medical technology on Narn isn't any better than what you have here. He would probably say, Dr. Franklin is the best, finest doctor I know. And if you don't take his treatment, I don't know what to tell you. And I'm so sorry. End of conversation. There's nothing left to give.
I think the only thing I could pretty much do for them, at least for his parents, is be a religious advocate for maybe he's the one that's like, no, I agree with the parents. Their religion is important to them. Their faith is important to them. It got it got the Narn through all of this turmoil. So maybe it would be interesting if he was more of the advocate of the parents' side of the equation as opposed to Sean's.
That would be a better role for him to play, where he really can't help so much, but maybe he says something to Franklin of, look, just because you don't believe in what they believe, does that make it any more or less valid? I understand your frustration with how this presents an obstacle to you curing this child, but he would say something far more eloquent than that and express the sentiment of respect their beliefs.
And maybe at a point where Franklin is kind of like at his wit's end, he's like, I'm going to do this anyway. And how somewhere or another, Jakar gets wind of this and has his Jakar sit down, as he does many times with other
there
characters.
You go. Yeah.
And gives them a little bit of wisdom, Jakar wisdom, right?
Yes. Which, and yeah, I mean, I have a feeling even with this Franklin, he might work himself up to about that point, but then Jakar could talk him down. And Earl's got a great comment about Franklin in the comments about the hubris that he has. And that is a part of who Franklin is, that sheer effing hubris, if I may steal a line from another show. He is overly confident in his abilities. He's a doctor. As we've discussed before, people come to doctors basically saying, my life is in your good hands. Fix me. That is the expectation. That's what people hope. And I think it does give you kind of not quite a complex, but you can save lives. That is about as close to God as you can get as a human being. There's a certain amount of power that comes from that, for sure.
One thing that we never saw in Believers, and maybe it could come into play here, if they made a plea to be part of the Interstellar Alliance, what type of healers do the children of the egg have? We never really discussed that.
Are they the type that just prays it away? I mean, do they have fairly primitive medical technology, or do they have maybe on the lines of a more supernatural, you can't explain it, but it still works type of a structure?
Yeah, that's the one thing that I think that still needs to be a little bit more addressed if we're going to say, like, hey, you know what? We know it's a faith-based system. We know that their faith is very strong, and we know that they are so devout to their faith that they're willing to sacrifice their own son just to make sure that his soul stays intact, even though that the dynamic between science and religion is very much at play here.
Oh, yes.
But what if, say, all of a sudden, an advocate for the children of the egg being not only, like, say, an ambassador, but their faith healer arrives to discuss the situation. Maybe this is where Jakar comes into play and says, hey, look, I understand spirituality. I understand how important this is to you, but we're talking about trying to save the life of one of your people. And don't you think that that kind of a soliloquy from Jakar would be like just worth season 5 alone?
It really would be. It would be right in line with what we would want out of him too. Here's a question. Say there is maybe like a premier, kind of faith-based healer among these people, and Sean's parents cannot get through. I mean, I guess his case is not drastic enough. He just won't hear it or what have you, don't know. Or maybe he's too busy because so many other people are sick, they can't get through. That's why they go to Babylon 5, desperate, knowing that there's a ticking clock, hoping there's something else. Does Jakar get through to this healer?
That would be an interesting conversation, because it really depends on where they come from, their spiritualities. Jakar grew into a spirituality because he believes that in embracing that, it's the only way to get his people through what they are what they endured, was their faith in Jaquan, or their faith in their separate God. Because I know that the Narn have also separate gods, but it's their faith that usually gets people through this kind of tumult and turmoil in their lives. And it would just be a really interesting religious and academic study of where, everyone else's opinions are. But then again, it all boils down to that scene where no one's really asking Sean what he wants. He's the one that has to endure this.
Yes. Okay, that brings me to the next dynamic I want to explore, which is the fact that we have Captain Lockley in season 5. She is not a diplomat in the way that Commander Sinclair is. And in Believers, he is the one who asked Sean what he wanted. He was the only one who did. I have a feeling Lockley can still take that place. She's going to be the one who's pointing out, well, we're all arguing about what to do here, but has anybody actually asked what Sean wants to do? I can hear her saying it.
Yeah, I think that like around like the round table and this kind of like diplomatic discussion where you have, all of these ambassadors, or the people that Sean's parents brought to the to the negotiating table. You have Dr. Franklin on one side. You have Jakar, you have Delenn, you have this faith-based healer that came to represent the children of the egg. You have Sean's parents. They're all talking around Sean, but no one's talking to Sean. And I can see that Lockley's like, hold on a second. None of you are the ones that are going under the knife. None of you are the ones that are making this choice, because Sean has to make the choice of also rejecting his faith in order to live. Right.
And what if he's willing to do that? That raises a whole other can of worms.
The other character that I also kind of wanted to throw in this equation, because if you want to place this in earlier in season 5, is that what if they made the plea to Byron? What would Byron be able to do?
He could light candles and sing songs horribly. I mean, as a telepath, they're kind of trying. I'm sorry. That is some serious Byron shade. But no, really, what can a group of telepaths do? They're looking for a place to call home. They don't have any security themselves. They don't have any power. They can listen.
They also have the ability to shelter him and give him asylum to where they're going if they wanted to.
So, would Sean possibly run away? Because here's another thing. We could keep the story as is to the point where Franklin does do the operation against the parents' wishes. And Sean, let's make him a more conscious, expressive character, where he knows, like, he tells Franklin, look, I want the operation. Give me the operation and don't tell my parents. And then Sean runs away. He's gone before the parents find out. He seeks asylum with the telepaths.
There is a possibility there, because the telepaths are very inclusive. They very much protect their own. Even though that Sean's not one of their own, Sean is on the run. And that's something that may appeal to Byron.
Well, they're all a bunch of orphans, right? He's not a telepath, but he is at this point now, if in this situation, basically looking for the same, like fighting for the same cause as they are. He's looking for a place to be, to stay, to live. All he wants at this point is to live.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Joanna said that
Earl.
I know. So
I'm
much
sorry.
shade.
We're
But
gonna
he
have
is
to do a
highly
show where,
flammable.
and you
So
know what?
much.
I want to set myself on fire when I hear that song. I understand.
What? That we can all come together to a better place?
Mhm.
A better place than this. So Joanna says that
At least you can sing better.
Could Lita have done the procedure without breaking the skin? Now that's a very interesting
really
thing.
good question.
Right?
Ooh.
Yeah.
That is something that we don't really explore much with Lita and her telekinetic abilities. Not nearly enough to completely. I think, okay, if we're going early season 5, she herself is not fully aware either of what her capabilities are. That's a big question mark. Would she, one, think she had any ability to do this?
Mhm.
And two, does this present the opportunity for an ongoing story arc where as Lita explores her abilities as basically the nuclear bomb of telepaths,
Mhm.
discovering what that all means, Sean is with Byron and the telepaths. She realizes eventually down the road somewhere, you know what? I could have saved you, and I'm so sorry I didn't know that at the time. I don't know where necessarily that would fit in the story, but it could be a really crazy footnote to throw in at the end of season 5, or at least after Byron's telepaths leave the station.
Well, the thing is that when we're looking at what she can do in terms of the physical manipulation of organic tissue, because that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
Lita doesn't have that ability. She's a telepath, not a telekinetic.
But is it possible that she is able to do that and just doesn't know it? I understand they're different things, but she's still figuring out what the Vorlons have done to her after all this time. She keeps exploring new things. And by the end of season 5, she has really started to tap into it.
But that's something that I think that would have to be written in terms of her character growth, because what Jason Ironheart gave to Talia was the ability to manipulate solid objects. And that's what
Talia did get telekinetic. Yeah.
Right.
But
and then
Lita, on the other hand, who the freak knows? I mean, she's beyond what anybody can imagine.
Telekinetically. She could be the most powerful
telekinetic. Who the F knows? Yeah, she just maybe has not realized what she's able to do.
And maybe somewhere along the line, that's where, if she understands or finds that latent ability later on, that's one of those types of I could have saved him moments if I understood or knew what they did to me. But that's what Bester was. They were kind of like alluding to that, where they were trying to create the invisible assassin, the assassin that could kill at line of sight, be able to to basically collapse an artery just by looking at it. That's what Ironheart was trying to say that the Psychor was trying to do.
Right. Yeah. Right. As DC Stevens said, Ironheart could have done it. He knew what was up. And then so that opens up a whole new can of worms too for Lita then. That makes her much more dangerous. And is it possible that in her adventures, as she ventures with Shakar, Shakar is a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do they go off to the Children of the Egg, their planet, and help heal people without puncturing the skin? Does she help save their race? Because maybe they're still reeling from this a little bit down the line.
Well, that is a really good play for Byron's people, because if there were any telekinetics like in his cadre or in his group, that they could have found some type of asylum on their planet, if they have a planet left, because we don't even really know like where the Children of the Egg
we don't know
people come from.
That's possible. I remember there was at least one person who was working on telekinetic skill in Byron's group. Now it was pretty primitive, but maybe Lita could possibly help them.
It was Peter, young Peter. He was the one that could throw objects with his mind. He was like a young blonde kid, kind of like
that guy, the
malnutrition, emaciated. Yeah.
The one who helped shave Sheridan. I can't talk no more. Shave Sheridan? What am I even saying? Guys, it's been a long day. I had meetings before this too.
That's subliminal.
A lot of talking today. And then sniffing paint yesterday with clean it, or, doing the trim, you guys, not exactly as I inundated.
So let's talk about some of the higher ups that we haven't really invested yet in this conversation. That's say Sheridan.
Okay,
how
yeah,
would
let's.
Sheridan have done, handled this?
That's a very good question, right? Because I have a feeling, is going to be much more aligned with the Interstellar Alliance alongside Delenn. Mm-hmm. And he's got to probably see this as an Interstellar Alliance issue. Are he and Lockley maybe going to have a little bit of a row as to whether or not this is an Earth Force issue or an interstellar issue? I have a feeling they're going to meet in the middle and try and work together. And Sheridan, I hate to say it, but he's going to mishandle this, isn't he?
He might. I think that Sheridan's very much a far bigger picture thinker right now, as opposed to the plight of any one person or one smaller alien race. That I think that if in some way that they would like seek admittance into the Interstellar Alliance, it's possible that he would intercede on their behalf because they're part of the membership. It's kind of like the European Union. Once you're part of the European Union, then you get to travel across our borders freely. You get to share in the economic sanctions, yada yada yada. So
sure, okay. So in that sense, he's maybe trying to recruit them into joining the Interstellar Alliance, and yet that's really not what Sean's parents are there to be worried about. They've got a ticking clock. They want to save their son. They're not diplomats either, as far as I recall. That would be great if they were part of the Interstellar Alliance, but right now they don't have time to be persuading their government to do that. That's like a bigger picture issue. And so I wonder if Johnny would just pass the buck and say, look, if you were a part of the Interstellar Alliance, we could help you. But the truth is, until that happens, we kind of can't.
Right. And I think I see Delenn being a little bit more, sympathetic towards them, towards Sean's parents and Sean himself, because of what happened with the Markeb and how she walked into that situation. Yeah.
She does not want to see another race go extinct again. Oh my gosh.
No. And there's that whole thing that she had with Sebastian, like life is my cause. Life is my, that's why I'm here, is to protect life, all life. Does that now factor in with Sean and his parents? Is she going to hold to those tenets of what she outlined in Comes the Inquisitor, or is she going to politicize it because of her position and who she's with?
Maybe. I feel like politicizing is more Sheridan's territory than hers. Mm-hmm. And Earl has a great comment about how the Shadow War might actually, we know that this is probably going to put the Children of the Egg into a much more desperate situation. Sheridan's role might be a little more of the political side of, do we have jurisdiction to override and let Franklin operate or not? Is this an Earth issue? Is it Interstellar Alliance? A lot of kind of infighting about that, mm-hmm. where really nothing good gets done.
Can you see that scene?
Basically, he's going nowhere fast.
Can you see that scene, where they're all arguing and Sheridan goes, "I said that's enough."
Where they're all arguing in the chamber about what to do, and then maybe that's where Lockley has her moment of, "Look, you guys, you're all fighting, and nobody's talking about what Sean wants." So,
who would be Sean's true advocate then in season 5? Who would be the one that would be, aside from Dr. Franklin? But Dr. Franklin has it for his own personal reasons, his own agenda and hubris, as Earl said. Who would be the one that's really on Sean's side, the way that Sinclair was on Sean's side?
That's a good question. To an extent, Lockley. But really, I think what we've set up so far is that Sean has to be his own advocate. Nobody is really speaking up for him anymore. He's, mm-hmm. for a child, going to be a lot more assertive.
So if that were the case, and Sean chooses his own destiny, how does he survive the eventual long walk with the robe to his own eventual death that he has accepted from his parents? Because he knew that was going to happen eventually, and he's submitted to it. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Like in essence, Sean, how do you want to be dead? Do you want to be physically and spiritually dead, or just spiritually dead? And try and find a way. That's, I mean, there's a lot of outcomes that could come from that too. Uh, we could go to the whole thing where he asks Franklin to operate, runs away, joins with the telepaths, or is it an issue of, as much as it hurts, like Sean's parents, and maybe Sean also decides for himself, I don't want to violate my beliefs. If this is how I go, I have to accept it. And it's a poopy ending. Nobody is going to feel good after this. And then you're kind of left wondering, though, like how, what more could we have done? Could we have done better for this poor kid?
Well, it's possible that, like, what I love about Babylon 5 is that sometimes, like, the answers or the solutions aren't necessarily in the most in the obvious characters. Let's look at the not obvious characters that may do something radical that would help Sean escape his whatever eventual outcome that was going to be. It's very well possible that,
love it.
Say,
let's subvert.
What about Lanier?
What would Lanier do?
Maybe in the heart of a ranger, what'd he do?
I was going to say, would he arrange for Sean to go to Minbar and possibly get an operation there with some sort of connection? But being that he is training with the Rangers, would he even be aware of what's going on necessarily? I mean, is this something he and Delenn would be talking about? I doubt it. I think Lanier is out of the picture.
Okay, so if that's not the case,
Veer.
Then what about Veer? And Veer is someone who is very sympathetic to putting people into the right place in the Underground Railroad, as Abraham Lakota would do.
Exactly. This is not his first time smuggling around and bending the rules. Veer, I feel, would be the best candidate, because he would sympathize with Sean and he would try to find some situations. So what would be Veer's solution here? Toroff has a great question about would Sean would ask asylum with the Interstellar Alliance before the operation. I don't think as a child Sean would come up with this idea on his own, but somebody could give it to him.
Mm-hmm. Like Jakar?
Like Jakar?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or, I mean, I don't know if this is something Veer would suggest or not. I'm having a hard time thinking of what Veer would do here.
It depends on what the Interstellar Alliance would feel is not some type of political issue with the people of the Children of the Egg. We don't really know kind of like what their power quotient is anymore,
right,
or ever did. We knew that they were desperate. At least we knew that Sean's parents were desperate. So we don't exactly know like what the political power or political persuasion of these people are now after the end of the Shadow War, after the Civil War. Like, what if they had something that the ISA wanted, but in operating on Sean would violate a trust, which would lose whatever advantage the ISA would get from the Children of the Egg? That's where Sinclair, I think, would really be at odds. And I'm sorry, Sheridan would be at odds, right?
100%. Yes. And really, I mean, the thing is I don't think there is anything that he can give. What is there to offer? I mean, these are these are not a technologically superior people. I don't feel like they have any advantage or any edge. You know what I mean? If anything, they're very middle of the road.
Yeah.
And we just don't know enough about their culture.
They don't really have any bargaining power. That's the issue.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
But again, Veer would love to speak up for the helpless, because that's what he does and he knows what that's like.
But maybe his hands are tied because of Londo. Londo's like, what are you doing? We don't have time for this. I need you to handle certain things, and you know what's going on with our people. It's like, no matter how hard you try, like there's always going to be a point where someone who's trying to do the right thing will get stopped at one point in time. That's the way that Joe writes, right? You know, that's just like, you get to this point where like, okay, everything's about to go everyone's way that's involved, and all of a sudden something catastrophic happens, and then the whole plan goes to pot, right? And then
I almost wonder if, okay, what if Veer were contemplating, well, I could take care of this child. I don't care if, I mean, he's got a soul to me. He seems complete to me. I don't care if his parents are going to disown him. He can come be with me. I'll take him in. And maybe Londo shoots him down. What are you talking about? You raising a child, Veer? Are you joking?
Oh my God,
That
Yolando
is
is
the
so
biggest
good.
load of horseshit I've ever heard.
Yolando is so good.
I mean, it'd be more eloquent than that. Joe could write better, but it would basically be that kind of sentiment where maybe Veer realizes, yeah, I don't know if that would be the best thing. But then what is? So I'm still stuck on that, but I do think Londo would shoot Veer down.
What about because of his situation, because of who he is, where he is, what about Garibaldi?
What about Garibaldi? What can he possibly do in his position as head of intelligence of the Interstellar Alliance at this point?
Mm-hmm. But battling his alcoholism at the same time.
Well, he's not necessarily in early season 5, not yet. So that's not necessarily in the picture. Ooh, he has a connection, though, to Edgar's Industries. And even though they're kind of focused medicinally on telepaths, maybe he's trying to get in touch with Lise to see if they've got something that might help him. Maybe that can be his subplot. And maybe it just doesn't pan out.
Yeah. It's difficult to put Garibaldi in that situation because he doesn't really have a lot of political clout. Yeah, he's barely keeping his head above water. Zach.
Yeah. I love Earl's suggestion that just came in about Zach being the one who asks Sean what he wants. Zach has the heart to do that and point that out. And he's also a guy who knows what it's like to be the odd one out. That's a very good point. The only difficulty would be getting those two together. Why would Zach be, say, in Medbay?
I don't know, but it's one of those things that Joe would be able to figure out. I think it would just. Oh yeah. I think it's just because Zach knows everything that goes on the station. But it's also that Zach is so tied into with everything that's going on in the station. The way that Garibaldi had ears everywhere. Maybe he heard, like, he knew that the parents were going from ambassador to ambassador to ambassador, or trying to find help. Zach would have heard of it. He would have heard of anything that happened on the station. That's why he was such a great second in command. And then he would have said, like, just all of a sudden, he's like, hey, I heard your parents are talking about trying to get you some help. What do you want?
That's a really good Zach impression. Yeah. I could see him. I don't know. He's got some sort of injury or something, getting cleaned up by Dr. Franklin or Dr. Hobbs or somebody. And Sean's there, and he says exactly what she said and relates to the kid on a completely different level than anybody else. I really love that touch for Zach.
Yeah, and it's very much in Zach's character, like when he showed up to Lita's quarters with pizza, and it's like, he was always upset about, like, yeah, I'm sorry, I have to move you out of your quarters. It's unfair.
It is. Yeah. No, I love that suggestion. Thank you so much, Earl. That is perfect. That is exactly who would do it.
But what would Zach be able to do? It's like way above his pay grade.
That's just it. His hands are kind of tied. He's just relating to the kid on a very, dare I say, human level, which I'm sorry is not the right term, but.
Well, I think it is the right. I think it is the right term because he's the kind of guy
from being to being, he's really understanding where this child is coming from and actually caring about what the child wants.
It would be a great moment for for Jeff if he had a little bit more of those soliloquy moments where he's talking about, it's like, I remember when I was young and he had something that happened to him, and he's like, but no one ever asked me what I wanted to do about it. Like, did I want to join this team? Did I want to join that team? My parents wanted me to go to this school, and it would be completely abstract from Sean's situation.
Sure, but you know what? Maybe that would inspire Sean to speak up for himself and express what he wants, realizing, oh, maybe I should do that for the first time in his life.
Right. But maybe that
could be something cool.
Maybe that's where we go with this, because Zach intervenes that way. Maybe this is where Sean's like, you know what? I'm willing to give up everything, because if I don't stand up for myself, then I die from this illness. If I do stand up for myself, then I die from this illness. But if I do stand up for myself and then stand up for myself again, then I may be without my people, but I'm still alive. Is that worth more to me than defaulting to my religious beliefs?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You could throw in a little bit of existential crisis where for the first time he is challenging his religious beliefs, maybe, and has to come to the decision, well, do I want to live?
Mm-hmm.
Even if that means basically throwing in the face his belief system that he's relied on his whole life, that he's been taught to believe, that his parents believe, knowing that his parents will disown him, probably, because he'd be dead to them.
Right.
You know?
And this is where the Rangers come into play. This is where I think that like maybe Delenn is like, this is where Delenn can kind of like exercise her influence. Like, she can't do anything about the decision. She can't go against the parents, but once that decision is made, she can get Sean off the station to join the Rangers and to fulfill a completely different path to serve.
Maybe so. Maybe so. So then does she help whisk him away to, like, with the Rangers to, an undisclosed location, if you will, mm-hmm. to a safe place where his parents can't find him, where he can live his life and serve a different purpose, and live a life again. Mm-hmm. And this is not a good look for the Interstellar Alliance, though, or the Rangers, or her, any of it. Sheridan, I think, is going to be very disappointed because it's opening a can of worms that he does not want. And yet, maybe here's a twist then. Maybe this is where Sean does ask for asylum. She said, he asked me. He asked. Right. I had to say yes. I had to agree.
Right. She was compelled, morally, religiously, she's compelled to help. She didn't go out there and offer it. But when someone came to her, she's like, how could I be the head of the Anlashak if I don't help?
Boom.
Right.
And that's justification enough. That is all she needed. And so then you could maybe throw Lanier in there, but you don't even have to. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it could be at the very end. He's like in between training cycles, like he was before during the Day of the Dead. And then all of a sudden he takes Sean away for Ranger training, and then that's the end of Sean, or at least that's how we see the end of Sean there.
That would also
be what also would be awesome would be if somewhere along the line after Lanier did what he did later on at the end, like in Objects in Rest, if Sean comes back to the station as a Ranger trainee and hands Delenn Lanier's apology data crystal.
Ooh, I love it. What a good callback.
Exactly. Just to do a little bit of a callback because Delenn was the one who saved him. And now he's the one who's delivering Lanier's news, trying to save his reputation to her.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Now, of course, he would have to be like a junior Ranger trainee, right? Like this kid is maybe about an Earth age of 8 to 10.
Oh, sure.
He's not really ready. But the thing is they would put him under their wing.
Yeah. Yeah. He would obviously have mentors or some type of, officer candidate or something like that, like training him.
Sure.
But that would have been interesting.
They'd make sure he's educated, trained, all the good stuff.
And I like the fact that Sean's given a second chance because that's what Babylon 5 is about. Babylon 5 is the station of second chances, right?
And hope. There's always hope on Babylon 5. And so I think story-wise, you would have to reach that point where it seems like all options have been exhausted. Nobody really can do anything. Everybody feels like their hands are tied. Lockley, Sheridan, Delenn, Sean's parents, the faith healer, everybody that you've brought into the story. And so then what? We're just going to let this kid die until he takes action himself. And that's not what anybody's expecting because he's a kid.
Right. Exactly.
Love it.
And
that's cool. That's really cool.
That's very in the spirit of Babylon 5. And I think that having him come to that decision because of Zach, I think is a home run part of the storytelling. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And Jeff Conaway is so good. I mean, I can see him having this very innocent, very casual conversation with Sean isn't really thinking a whole lot about it, and yet that is the absolute catalyst to change everything.
So we have like a couple more minutes, and we wanted to throw in a couple of, I guess, alternate reality situations here for characters that would have championed Sean's cause, but were not in season 5. And say, for example, this episode was put into season 4 somewhere, maybe earlier on.
Uh-huh.
I think that if anyone would have found a way to champion Sean's cause, it would have been Marcus.
100%, right? Marcus is always looking for the hard luck case that nobody else can handle. He would have fought tooth and nail. Now, what do you suppose, though, the resolution might have been? Marcus is the advocate. Okay. But how does the story end?
I think it ends with Sean still going to the Rangers. I think that because the way that the Rangers opened up their I guess their acceptance, their doors to like other species, this is where they would take somebody like a Marcus, because Marcus didn't want to be a Ranger. He did it because of the guilt that he had for his brother. Maybe this is Marcus's way of like, you know what? I can do something with this. I can do something with this boy and give him something that he can fight for and believe in and be a part of again, because he's lost his family. He's lost his parents. He's lost his religion. He's lost everything but his life. So what are we going to do with this life? We're going to give him a direction and a purpose. I see Marcus doing that. That's what Marcus does.
I could certainly see him fighting for that, but knowing just what a tragic figure Marcus is, generally speaking, I do wonder if this story would end happily. Where Marcus does everything that he possibly can, things don't go the way he wants them to. He advocates for all of the things that you just talked about, going to the Rangers and having what you would think would be a good life, and then something goes awry and Sean dies anyway. More grief for Marcus.
But the thing is that Sean dies by his choices, not by anyone else's choices. So. And that's kind of like the silver lining, sure.
Well, Marcus will still feel a lot of guilt for that and probably wonder, well, where did I go wrong? Damn it, why does this keep happening to me? I lose everybody I invest in. Except for Ivanova. Not yet.
Oh, true. But I think, again, in just in terms of the advocate of, of hard luck cases, Marcus would be the one that I think would be the most invested.
Sure. And certainly passionate, if nothing else. Because he understands that through and through.
What did Earl say here? Forgive me, but quote unquote, Sean goes off with the Rangers, unquote, even though I think it's a good idea, has spinoff written all over it. Jim Henson's On La Shock Babies. How dare you, sir? How dare you? This is a serious This is a serious live stream.
Don't listen to Norm. No, it's not. I just am envisioning a bunch of Muppets now with Ranger fighting pikes. And I'm sold.
Oh my God. I'm down.
We're committing this to series right now. We're good.
Can you imagine like little baby Naroon?
On the Shock Babies. Da, 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 da. Yeah. Oh shit. That's great.
So Babylon 5,
even says.
I think that we're all kind of like on the same page of Babylon 5 being kind of like the haven for second chances. So there's something that I wanted to kind of spin off on for our next show, which will not be next week. Our next show will not be next week.
No, because you and I are both getting the second Fauci ouchie, and therefore at risk of not feeling so great the day after. And those of you who have gotten your second vaccine probably have your own stories to share. So preemptively, we are taking no risks of having to cancel the show the day of and saying, nah, let's just not and rest.
Yeah, but a lot of this conversation did spark up one idea that I think is worth definitely exploring, because Babylon 5 again is a haven for second chances. The mind wipe. The mind wipe is a second chance, some believe. Is the ability, so this is just out there to put into Discord. And I know Shar, I think you're gonna do the link thing.
I'm on it.
Yes. But for the next time we meet, expanding upon this idea that Sean would get a second chance, so did characters in Babylon 5 throughout the course of the 5 seasons. Did they get a second chance through the mind wipe procedure, where the body dies, but the ability for the body to serve still lives on? Or I should say the consciousness dies, but the body lives on. So that's very much like kind of like where Sean. I do. I do, but that's kind of
Yeah,
like where
but it's so
Sean
good
is,
though.
right? If Sean's,
Yeah, well, and
the procedure is that Sean dies according to his faith, but the body lives
yes,
on, the shell lives on. So giving him the second chance of being able to serve is very much like the mind wipe, giving someone like, say, Brother Edward, the ability to serve, to inspire people to do better things. But what happens if that mind wipe, is doesn't take hold? We've seen that happen where the mind wipe is also something. It's very risky. So
100%.
are we on board with that? Are we not on board with that? Is it a second chance? Is it not a second chance? Where do we go from there?
I would love to explore this topic. It is such a double-edged sword. So let's do it. Let's talk about it. Let's go in depth. And yes, Earl, I did say Fauci ouchie.
That's a thing, right?
It is.
That's
It's a
thing out there.
hashtag on Twitter. That's where I got it
Yeah.
from. Yeah,
There you
people
go.
take their selfies with their Band-Aid and their, all that. And they say, I got my Fauci ouchie.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to what happens next, but I'm looking forward to it. So to get that
I'm
out of the way.
looking forward to it just to get it done and have as much peace of mind as I can, knowing I'm as protected as I can be from the dangers of COVID. We're not going to die. We might not feel great after the second shot. That's usually if you're going to feel anything, it's going to be then. I can handle that. It's going to be short-lived, much shorter lived than COVID itself.
Yeah. Who had said this? It was Peter Dinklage as Tyrion Lannister. He says, death is so very permanent.
It truly is. And you can die from COVID. And I don't know about you. I'm not ready to expire yet. I got things to do.
Yeah, we have discussions to be had. So
That's right.
Again, so put it on your calendars, not for May 9th, but the weekend after. That will be May 16th. We'll be back here with a new Zocalo, and we'll be talking about the mind wipe, second chance or not.
Yes. Oh gosh, it's going to be a good one, guys. So in the meantime, in the U.S., it will be Mother's Day on the 9th. So to those of you who are mothers of any creature, happy Mother's Day to you all. And we will see you the following week.
So if you like what you've seen here, thank you everyone for joining us. Again, another fantastic turnout here, in the conversation. You. So if you like what you have seen, if you like what we talk about here on the Zocalo cast, make sure that you hit your like and subscribe button. That does the YouTube algorithm thing, so it allows people to get a little bit more, of us in their feeds from time to time. And make sure that you follow us on all of our social media channels. On Twitter, we are on Zocalo Live Cast. And Shar, you're on Twitter where?
At Oh the Profanity. Where are you? At
Lounge Lizard. So you can find us there on our respective channels on social media. Of course, Char just posted the Discord. So please join us there if you have not done that yet, where we can continue this conversation.
That's right. Yeah, we've got all sorts of fun stuff there. We do more than Babylon 5, although we, of course, talk Babylon 5, but we also do deep space franchises. Lots of talk about these Earth creatures called cats, and a whole lot more. We do the memes, all the funny stuff, and an occasional venting, too.
Dogs or cats?
All of the above. All of the above. Although I think we're pretty cat dominant on our Discord. But anyway, if you're not on there, the link that I posted in the chat is good for the next 7 days. So get in on that and join us, please. Let's get that place screaming.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for taking this time on your Sunday to be a part of our live cast. And until next time, I've been Norm. That's been Shar. And be seeing ya.
Take care, everybody.